Today's on Being You, we reflect on the fifth principle. The right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregation and society at large is a principle that sets Unitarian Universalism apart from other forms of religion. The fifth principle reflects values that are deeply ingrained in our culture, values that were strongly voiced at the time that the United States of America was being founded. It was a time in which old notions of monarchies and church-based autocracies were being challenged and replaced with notions of human rights and freedom of religion. Not by accident, then, the fifth principle reflects our very cultural identity as a country and defines our position in the world stage as what George Washington called the Great Experiment. Our church does not dictate religious beliefs or government policy, but instead encourages personal ethic development, as well as the development of the processes on which our government was founded. By affirming and promoting the values of the fifth principle, we are stating a belief that the combination of individual conscience and group democratic processes is the preferred method for change and adaptation in our society. Therefore, if we believe in this freedom of conscience and the use of democratic process as the best way to bring about a more fair and just society, then we are challenged to educate ourselves in the ways of this principle and how it works, as well as how it fails, so that we may better appreciate its value. Lisa Bear. Today's opening words are number 505, let us be at peace. Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become holy ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being, common to us all and to all living beings. Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion towards ourselves and towards all living beings. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the sufferings that are going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth. Amen. Thich Nhat Hanh. Please rise as you are willing and able to join us for today's affirmation.
In greening lands begins the song, which deep in human hearts is strong. In cheerful strains your voices raise, to fill the whole spring world with praise.
And our opening hymn, number 86.
Blessed Spirit of my life, give me strength through stress and strife. Help me live with dignity. Let me know serenity. Fill me with a vision. Clear my mind of fear and confusion. When my thoughts flow restlessly, let peace find a home in me. Spirit of great mystery, hear the still small voice in me. Help me live my wordless creed as I comfort those in need. Fill me with compassion, be the source of my intuition. Then when life is done for me, let love be my legacy.
Our transitional words are boundless goodwill.
Let us cultivate boundless goodwill.
Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state.
Let none in anger or ill will wish another harm.
Even as a mother watches over her child, so with boundless mind should one cherish all living beings,
Radiating friendliness over the whole world.
above, below, and all around, without limit.
Metta Sutta.
Once again, our program today will be presented by Muriel Ryan, who will be speaking to us on compassion, and I think she's got a little something to say about homeless.
Dottie called me last night and I said, I'm so anxious, I'm so caught up, and I want to make sure I do this right. And she said, many of these people they're very friendly and there's not a very big crowd, and I told her this morning when she came in and asked me how I was doing, I said, I got up this morning and realized I needed to scrap everything I'd done. I was making much too formal, not necessarily humane enough, frankly. And so I brought up my book, and I'm going to share with you some of the stories, at least the highlights in the background, as well as focusing on how people become homeless. Terre Haute still has a homeless problem. I think any city over 500 has a homeless program. When I worked, and granted I left that on a full-time basis in 2017 to care for Bernie, and the short story is I was always amazed at anything when it came to the issue of homelessness. Just some facts that still stick in my mind. Number one, the rural environment has next to no services for the homeless. I remember getting a call from Hymera, a gentleman that needed shelter, who was living in a vacant house, no heat, no water, no nothing. And as winter approached, he recognized the fact that he's likely to be in trouble there, health-wise. The other thing, too, is that there's presently not enough beds anywhere, or shelter, or alternatives. One of the things that sticks in my mind is there was a period of time that Greencastle was shut down. They had to end up getting community resources so they could reopen their shelter, and between Effingham, Illinois and Indianapolis, Terre Haute was the only place for shelter. And every time that we did a count, which is normally done by the federal government, the point in time count, the population that were identified was twice as many as the number of beds that were in Terre Haute at that time. And I can tell you with great confidence in my own that hasn't improved a whole lot. The circumstances for folks that are looking for shelter, even the beds that are available, some of those require funds, less than a hotel room would be for a week, but at the same time, still resources that many folks don't have. Which brings me to the reasons why the folks that are in the book became homeless. One of the things that's critical to understand, as opposed to listening to the debate on Dr. Phil that happened 2 days this week, it is not true, and I feel that there'll be an understanding of this rapidly, that homeless people are lazy. In fact, I found them to be very industrious and fairly creative at different times. They're knowledgeable about the fact that particularly the winter and the summer, they've got to find places they can be safe. I shared both a local Bible radio station as well as a number of other places this year during those freezing temperatures. A homeless person is more likely to die due to heat exhaustion or frostbite, etc., hypothermia, than they are of thirst or hunger. So it's the climates When I left in 2017, I had the same passion I'd had since 2012, 5 years into it. And I know Reach Services were looking at it, but still we have no program for what's called, in the county, called red flag and white flag. Red flag being for extreme temperatures, and white flag being for cold. I will say that I need to give, I think it's St. Stephen's, that is providing during extreme temperatures that are low, are providing overnight. And the accolades go to them for their efforts. Now to the people that we served. I want you to understand, and I fought with my publisher when I did this, that these people are real. All of these people that are in the book, they've had their names changed, number one. Number two, I have signed notarized releases. And number three, I left out some of the gorier parts, but the short story is the stories in here are absolutely true. And I had to argue with the publisher about telling true stories, number one, and number two, that I identified the fact that it had happened in Terre Haute, Indiana. I did discover a local bookstore did a little research, and is the only faith-based in any way whatsoever book written about true people identified in where they were at, and where the problem existed for that community. The first lady was a lady that came to us from another agency where she had been there for almost 18 months. 18 months because her daughter had a cancerous tumor removed from her brain. Mom had severely high blood pressure. And last but not least, she had been in a situation where she lost all resources of finance because she had had an accident at work that caused both orthopedic challenges as well as neurological challenges, and the employer had declined to file anything for workman's comp. And not having an understanding as to how to file a complaint, she found herself being evicted from where she was at. She came to us, our first client died. 6 months after being with us, she had a massive stroke. Within 4 hours, she didn't know what a pen or pencil was, and within 12 hours, she was totally, completely comatose. That left us with a 13-year-old child who is now a grown woman, and at the time, we spent 36 hours, Bernie and I, searching out where her half-brother was. Fortunately, we were able to we found him, thanks to the Clinton Police Department, and we were able to meet him the next morning at the hospital, and by Monday morning, he was filing for custody. He was over 21. Her mother would pass 4 weeks later. The second family that we served, Mom had extremely high blood pressure. She had 6 children. One was coming home from the hospital with a newborn. There were 4 boys in between, and the chapter focuses pretty much on the boys in between. When they signed their release, one of the things they said as they looked at the house where they had lived for 2 years was, "This is home. We've never felt like it was home anywhere else. This is home." Why did Mother have 6 children and not have any resources? Well, number one, she'd lived in a large metropolitan area, Chicago, and she'd always taken public transportation, and she had never learned to drive. And in fact, trying to give her driver's lessons was a great anxiety for her. The other thing, too, is that she could not get child support. with her blood pressure at employment that she had had kept dropping off because she would have horrible headaches. And she had discovered the hard way that if your complaint or your request for child support was going to have to be sent to the county of Cook in Illinois, and as she put it, sending them a letter, finding someone to advocate, is something like dropping a tissue into a blazing fire. You don't get attention paid to you. The boys and I still have contact, quite a bit of contact. All four of them are now fathers, and being fatherless themselves, even though they all had the same father, being totally ignored by their biological father, the short story is they are determined to be the best fathers they could possibly be. The next case that's in the book is a lady that came to us. I was called by Woodrow Wilson Middle School, and I went over and met her and her daughter. Her daughter was 11. They were on the road with mother's husband at that time, and the way the circumstances ran, within the first 6 months, we had 2 suicide attempts on the occasion of the daughter. About 3 months into their stay, father had come over from the men's shelter, and mom and daughter are at the women's shelter. Now, he was within walking distance of being able to meet every week, but that wasn't enough for him. And so at 11:30 at night one night, he came to the women's shelter and demanded that she and the daughter walk with him to Indianapolis that night. Short story is this man did not have the mental health treatment that he needed. And when the police came in, alternative as to whether or not to have him arrested or to have him returned to the men's shelter, they wanted to know what I wanted to do, and I said, he can only go back to the men's shelter if he will get mental health treatment starting tomorrow morning. I'll pick him up, I'll take him, he's going to Hamilton Center. Well, the gentleman insisted he was leaving, and they made sure that he left rather than get arrested. But going to Indianapolis, he came back twice, once at Thanksgiving and once just before Christmas he had planned to come. Both times, his stepdaughter slashed her wrist. Both times, I told Harshua Clinic folks it has something to do with her dad, her stepdad. Both times, they told me that I was exaggerating. I went with Mom one day to a counseling appointment. And as I left her, and as the counselor left with Mom to the front lobby, I said, "Can I go back and speak to her again?" Counselor said, "Sure." And I looked at her and I said, "I think I know what's going on." I had had quite a bit of training in Minnesota, where I was a principal, on signs to look for. I said, "You have something to tell your mother. You have to. Today is the day. No one's going to listen unless it comes out of your mouth." I went back out in the lobby. She came out just long enough to ask for her mother to come back to the room. Mother and I left, and Mother was very quiet as we exited the door. Next thing I know, she is regurgitating into the grass. Her daughter told her. The gentleman has been, I don't like to use that word, the person who had violated her had sent Mom to go out and work so they could stay in hotels when they were in Florida. They walked all the way back from Florida. They walked from South 3rd pardon me, North 3rd. I live on South 3rd. North 3rd Street to Woodrow Wilson Middle School every day. And Mom kind of perceived that it was a casual stroll compared to coming from Florida. Mother reunited with the father of her older children. She had no contact and did file criminal charges on behalf of her daughter, both here in Vigo County as well as Florida. But she never understood until the daughter told her that is why the stepfather had insisted Mom work and he would stay and take care of the daughter. It started when she was 7. She left us when she was 13. Mom is now reunited with her older children and their father. They have remarried. She's a grandmother and a great-grandmother now. And I take great joy in knowing that we had any part of changing their lives. Homelessness is a very complicated issue. There is no one reason that people become homeless. The only thing I got out of 2 hours of Dr. Phil with listening to people argue was that the problem needs to be handled, dealt with, served in multiple phases, multiple ways. You cannot look at these people and decide they're all alike. It's absolutely impossible, number one. And number two, it's totally inappropriate. We have other cases. Military pregnancy with a disability, no benefits, you're pregnant, discharged with a dishonorable discharge, childhood trauma, including fires, being locked in the basement from the time you are 3 until you're 18, and being with a radical, overly conservative person of faith claiming he was God, and that's the reason why you got locked in the basement. It goes on. And again, I hope these stories reinforce for you that they are not all alike. Not even close. Well, my topic was compassion. I've told you stories of things that are almost heartless. And I tell you that wherever you extend compassion, that's what I discovered worked over and over and over again. An understanding of uniqueness, that's compassion. An understanding that they weren't homeless people. I know a number of years I got a lot of re-education. It's not a Down's child, it's a child that has Down syndrome. It's not a hyperactive student, it's a student with hyperactivity. Our grandson, it's not a autistic child, it's a child with autism challenges. Give them the dignity. So I got to the point, particularly working with those folks, of calling them persons presently without a home. They've had homes. They've had locations that are important. Your language is compassion. Your attitude is compassion. Your sensitivity, your understanding, that's compassion. I would ask you today, after these words you've heard, to seek to measure every act, every word, every feeling is how it measures up to your personal and sacred definition of compassion. Are you being as compassionate as you would to a stranger, as you would a close family member? That close family member deserves compassion, but I would contend that so does that stranger. Thank you.
I think it's hard for most people to understand the sheer numbers of the homeless problem in Vigo County and other places, simply because they are invisible to most people. And it requires an effort. Today's closing hymn is number 127, Can I See Another's Woe?
Can I see another's woe, and not be in sorrow too? Can I see another's grief, and not seek for kind relief? Can I see a falling tear, and not feel my sorrow share? Can a father see his child weep, nor be with sorrow filled? Can a mother sit and hear infant groan, an infant fear? No, no, never can it be. Never, never can it be.
Our closing words are number 661, The Heart Knoweth. We have a great deal more kindness than is ever spoken.
The whole human family is bathed with an element of love like a fine ether.
How many persons we meet in houses, whom we scarcely speak to, whom yet we honor and who honor us.
How many we see in the street or sit with in church, whom though silently we warmly rejoice to be with.
Read the language of these wandering eye-beams.
The heart knoweth. Ralph Waldo Emerson.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
Go in peace, know that you are loved, and that your life is sacred.
Value statement. We value a sense of community, religious tolerance, cooperation, diversity, active social justice, and good works. Mission statement. We exist to provide a community for persons of diverse, liberal, religious beliefs, and to support one another in our individual, spiritual, and ethical growth.